Before diving in the topic of today and discussing the consequences for us Europeans of the new global geopolitical context, let me add a personal note. It's a real pleasure to meet my former colleagues Ben and Nikos again today, thanks to The Economist. The pleasure of working with them in the past for a more sovereign Europe was immense, and the pleasure of meeting them today is just as great. So, since I left my position as a minister in 2022, our security environment has become even more threatening and unstable. And I'm very pleased that our respective countries are continuing their efforts in this vital area. So with Nikos, I had the honor of preparing the strategic partnership signed in 2021 by Prime Minister Mitsotakis and President Macron. This partnership, which includes mutual security clause, which is a bit unusual, has already resulted in a joint exercise in the Mediterranean Sea, the delivery of Rafale jets, and the launching of modern frigates. So the objective is very clear: to strengthen our interoperability and contribute to the security of a deeply unstable region, even more so since October 7, 2023, and the war in Gaza. With Ben, I can say that we would have liked to do more together. Our two countries share a strategic vision, a culture of intervention, and the responsibility of being nuclear powers. But Brexit dominated that period, and the negotiations for the United Kingdom exit from the Union created, I must say, a confrontational climate that was not conducive to strengthening our cooperation. And then there was AUKUS, which plunged our relationship into a crisis of trust. Thankfully, we have since found common ground again in our joint support for Ukraine and initiatives such as the Coalition of the Willing, a British-French initiative now gathering more than 30 countries. And soon, France and the UK will again stand together at the UN to recognize Palestine. I was also asked to say a few words about the political situation in France. I don't know, I need to spend some time on it because it's very worrying. It would have been easier for me if this panel would have taken place next week, because the Prime Minister will face a vote of confidence in Parliament next Monday. What I can say is that few believe he will obtain it, and the President will have either to appoint a new Prime Minister to try and pass a budget, or dissolve the National Assembly once again. In that case, what is pretty sure is that the far right could well increase its presence in Parliament. So, either way, political instability at home adds another challenge at a moment when Europe faces existential questions abroad. So, everyone here is aware that the rules-based order which emerged after the Second World War is being violently challenged, with the shift in the US, with the election of Mr. Trump, who values force and disregards international law. Then the rising power of China, asserting itself as a new leader in part of the world and challenging, along with Russia and others, the post-1945 and post-Cold War international order. And then, last but not least, the increasing number of conflict everywhere in the world. So let's be clear, Russia's war in Ukraine is not only a war against that country, it's a war against Europe itself, against our security, against our values, against democracy. Putin is fighting all that we stand for. President Macron reminded us during the Cold War Europe was the battlefield, but never the main player. The arms control treaties, INF, START, that shaped our security were negotiated without us by the United States and USSR and then Russia. And when they collapsed more recently, they collapsed without us again. So everyone knows when you're not at the table, you are on the menu. So it's up to us, Europeans, to define our own security and defense architecture. And this was necessary before February 22, and it's even more vital now, because Russia tests us everywhere, in the air, at sea, in space, in cyberspace, and even by jamming the GPS of the plane carrying Ursula von der Leyen recently, last week. So who can believe that Russia would stop at Ukraine? It's become a direct threat to Europe and to France, so we can no longer procrastinate. I will not be long. You all know that since he was elected in 2017, President Macron had a clear vision about the need to have a stronger Europe, to get more sovereign. So I would not quote his words, but they are as relevant as it used to be 8 years ago, especially since American disengagement is no longer gradual, but brutal. So I have fully supported this project of having a stronger Europe when I was in my position of minister. And I think that even if sometimes we felt a bit alone with our European partners, we have made great progress. And this will be my conclusion. My first conviction is that European defense is becoming a reality. European countries are more willing to protect themselves, to cooperate, to produce their equipment together, and to reduce their dependencies on the rest of the world. My second conviction is that NATO remains indispensable. Article 5 deters Putin, provided that the alliance's main shareholder, I mean the US, does not weaken it. In this respect, I do not believe that Mr. Trump has an interest in devaluating this alliance. It is, to me, far more simple. After burden sharing, what he wants now is burden shifting. So yes, we Europeans must do our part. We must keep the United States as close as possible while reducing our immense dependencies. But never confuse partnership with dependence. Europe cannot be reduced to financing American factories with the European money. And we must not yield to the blackmail of those who would have Europeans finance American industry, not only through tariffs, but also by forcing us to spend more on defense exclusively with American equipment, or by threatening us if we do not change our rules on digital regulation. Third conviction, Ukraine. After the catastrophic Anchorage summit, thanks to the initiative taken by the Europeans at the meeting held in Washington a few days after, it seemed that we are finally beginning to move seriously on security guarantees. Maybe we will have the opportunity to come back to the meeting that happened yesterday in Paris, so I will not comment on that. And finally, the Middle East. France's decision to recognize the state of Palestine is a strong political and moral act. I fully support it, but don't get me wrong, it will not immediately end the war in Gaza, but it can pave the way for the only credible solution discussed before, two states living side by side in peace and security. So the core of the speech was about European strategic autonomy. The question that naturally comes is, who's pushing Europeans more towards strategic autonomy, Trump or Putin? The question remains open. What is sure is that France's warnings were not unfounded, and that as Europeans we have made great progress together. But there is still so much to do, and we no longer have time to procrastinate. Europe is a power that is still unaware of itself, and it's time for it to realize it. Because the truth is simple, and as I said often, either Europe faces up or Europe fades away. Thank you.
Thanks very much.